Hi there, I'm Alex Bertay. Welcome back to Mentor's Compass, your favorite spot for many things mentoring. So today we're going to talk about a scenario for you mentors that if you haven't already experienced it, you most likely will at some point. And that is connecting with your mentee when connecting with him is difficult. Now there are so many factors that can contribute to making connecting with a mentee challenging. Maybe you and he share different temperaments. You're a sanguine and he's a melancholic. You're gregarious and outgoing, and he's reserved and guarded. Maybe your mentee has a pattern of doing or saying things on occasion, either directly to you or in front of you, or that you've overheard or seen in passing. And these observations and experiences have led you to engender unpleasant reactions or frustrations. Or perhaps that particular area where your mentee really needs to grow just happens to be a perfect match for your hot button issue. That thing that you just have so little patience for in others, or maybe even yourself. Or maybe you teach or coach your mentee and he's been acting out in class or on your team and you're having trouble putting aside and overriding the residual negative vibes that have come about as a result. So this is not an all-inclusive list, and there could be many other reasons why connecting with your mentee is difficult. But whatever the reason is, factors such as these don't inspire positive feelings in you and can get in the way of mentoring. So what do you do? The answer is relatively simple. You make a choice to love your mentee. Just like when you commit to doing anything worthwhile, sooner or later your enthusiastic and positive emotions will abandon you. And at that point, your commitment and devotion to the cause will remain only by virtue of your making an act of your will. Mentoring is easy when you're mentoring a boy who produces all sorts of positive emotions in you. When you see that he's taking to your suggestions like a duck in water, recommendations for outside reading, growing in his spiritual life, or improving his study habits. But not every boy you mentor will fit that mold, and these boys need mentoring too. So this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you need to invoke your will and make a choice to love the person. This is where you make a commitment to be genuinely curious about this boy, to want to get to know as much as you can about his life, to discover his interests, his ideals, his convictions, to understand him, to see things from his point of view, and to share in his life with him. You make a choice to accept your mentee based on his totality, his whole personhood, his virtues, his qualities that you don't yet quite understand or fully appreciate, and his defects which you are charitably disposed to help him overcome. What happens when you do this, when you make this choice, this act of your will to love your mentee despite the difficulties you're encountering in getting to know him and the ensuing awkward mentoring sessions you're having? As a consequence, you're going to naturally engender more positive feelings towards him. You'll develop more affinity for him. You'll begin to appreciate qualities you didn't fully appreciate as being an important aspect of who he is, part of his story, a glimpse into the world within him. You won't turn a blind eye to things that need correcting or refining, because that's part of your job as a mentor. But at the same time, you won't despair that there's nothing you can do or that the two of you aren't getting anywhere. You'll meet this boy where he's at. You'll be happy to see him. And the thing of it is, in time, he'll likely reciprocate. He'll notice a change in you, and he'll take a greater interest in you and your interactions with him. You won't always know what's on his mind, and you won't always feel as if you've really got him figured out, but your heart will be in it, and you'll be doing what you can. You'll be like a farmer who prepares the ground and cultivates the right conditions for the harvest to bear fruit. So, what are some practical things you can do as a mentor to make an act of your will and choose to love your mentee when loving him is hard, or when making a connection with him is difficult? Well, here are a handful of ideas you might consider. Certainly not an all-encompassing list, but you might find some of these ideas helpful. Number one, have a mantra, a reference point. Before you see him, literally say to yourself, I am choosing to love this person. I am choosing to be interested in him. I'm choosing to communicate to him that I care for him and I want to learn about him. And I'm doing this with my facial expressions, my tone, my interest in what he has to say, my efforts to really understand him, my efforts to embrace him with all his virtues and defects, my optimism, my cheerfulness, my carefully chosen guidance. This can really have a profound effect on how you interact with your mentee. Number 2, remember that he is a person. Remind yourself that your mentee is not just a mentee. He's not a student, he's not a player, he's a person. He's a person to be known. And like yourself, he has a soul of infinite value and worth. He has an interior world that is unique and separate from yours, but no less complex. And however he presents, he's communicating to you something important about what's going on inside, his life experience, how he's learned to relate with people. Get to know this person, understand him, and be patient in the process. Number 3, meet him where he's at. If all you can talk about with him is sports, well, so be it. Bond over sports. If what gets him going is talking about Yu-Gi-Oh cards, ask him to teach you about Yu-Gi-Oh. So long as it's nothing immoral, hey, take an interest. Gradually, in little doses over time, gently encourage him to expand his horizons with thoughtful, practical suggestions on other things like outside reading, prayer tips, service opportunities, picking up hobbies, etc. Number 4, say what you see. There will be times when you've asked about everything you could think of. You've followed the mentoring textbook to the T, and yet your mentee is still quiet and guarded. Say what you see. Hey man, I notice that I keep asking you questions and you're pretty quiet over there. It's like you're a prize fighter with an excellent jab, keeping me on the outside, and I'm bobbing and weaving. What's up? You know, I got a booger hanging. Did I do something? Right? What are you doing here? You're acknowledging what is known and unspoken to this point, that there's something like a wall, an invisible wall between you and your mentee, and it's time for the two of you to start chipping away at it. Number 5, make notes of what's going on in your mentee's life. Birthdays, special events like musical events, sporting events, theater, a sick family member, a project he's working on, a pending application somewhere, and be sure to check in periodically about these things. Let him know by your interest and follow-up that you've been thinking about him outside of your mentoring sessions and you're wondering how he's doing. You've had some concern for what's going on in his life. Some people might just call this good manners, and maybe so, but in the hustle bustle of the normal day-to-day grind, it's easy to let this slip because you're so busy. And lastly, most importantly, pray for your mentee daily, by name. Lord, how would you talk to Johnny about this? Lord, how would you act in my shoes in this circumstance? Lord, help Billy with this. Make up the difference. You love him more than I do. Help him with this thing I know he needs help with. Never underestimate the power of prayer. So consider trying some of these ideas. Now maybe you don't score a touchdown in your next mentoring session, but it's still a success if you get a first down or you wind up a few yards forward. Right? So think like that. Small baby steps. All right, that's our time for this week. Thank you as always for joining us here at the Heights and Mentors Compass. Be sure to print out the PDF that goes with this video, give it some thought, and happy mentoring. I'm Alex Bertay. See you next week.